And we can all see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So first, let's start with just a high-level overview of what the protocol does. So Ajna is the best way for a DeFi familiar to think of it is a more decentralized version of compound robbing. Probably a little more similar to something like Euler because it has isolated pools rather than cross-collateralized pools or cross-margin pools. But at its core, you have two tokens in each pool, a quote token and a collateral token. The quote token is the one that's getting lent and borrowed, and the collateral token is the one that's being pledged as collateral in order to borrow the quote token. So there's two types of users, primary at least. The lender, they come to the protocol, they deposit quote token. The borrower, they come to the protocol, they extract quote token by pledging collateral. Now we have all of the other mechanisms that you would anticipate in a lending market in this protocol, but that is like the core functionality we're trying to achieve. And we do it without using oracles and we do it without using governance. This is an immutable protocol, just like Uniswap. Any questions at the get-go, Dimitri, before I dive in?
Okay. At this point, my question will be naive. So I apologize in advance.
No, please.
Price here, is it rate for lending borrowing, or is it classic price between two assets?
Yes. So the Ajna pool, when you initiate it, is divided into these buckets. Each bucket's a price. The price represents 1 unit of collateral in quote token. So
it's price, just exchange one to two. Okay.
Let's pretend that the pool is the collateral is ETH and the quote token is USDC. If you see a $1,000 price, that means that that bucket is valuing 1 ETH at 1,000 USDC. Okay. So yes, the whole pool is broken into buckets. There's 7388 buckets, and the midpoint is 1. So there is the number 1 in the pool. We have a concept called. I'm just going to walk you through these high-level concepts. High-level concept: target utilization. So to do this, we take the 3.5-day EMA of the system debt, which is the debt outstanding in the pool, to the 3.5-day EMA of the, well, I'll explain what these are in a bit, LUP times total collateral, and it's maxed at 10 times debt. Target utilization, just think of it as where we want the pool to be in equilibrium. So this is, if you think of the utilization as what percentage of deposits are being lent out, this is our target. So if we say we have an 80% target utilization, we want 80% of the deposits, and specifically we mean meaningful deposits, which I'll get to in a minute, but we want 80% of the meaningful deposits to be lent out and 20% to be sitting on the book to facilitate refinancing of people who want to pull out. So meaningful actual utilization, this is what I was just talking about. This is only deposit that is above the pool's threshold price. Now, the pool's threshold price is the price you get by taking the debt and dividing it by the total collateral. This is basically where any deposit above this price could, at least in theory, be used to refinance other deposits, whereas anything below this price is not able to be used. Therefore, we don't consider it meaningful, and we don't count it in our calculations. And by the way, feel free to interrupt me at any time. The highest price bucket's relatively self-explanatory. This is the highest price bucket, which contains deposit in quote token. Buckets can also contain collateral, and that's claimable by the people who deposited. That's not counted in the highest price bucket calculation. The highest price bucket is only the highest bucket that has quote token in it. And the reason that that'll change is because you can arbitrage people out. So if I have, let's say we'll go back to our ETH to USDC market. If I have 100 USDC in the $10,000 bucket, someone's going to come and they're going to put collateral in that bucket and take out my quote token because that's arbitrage. The interest rate, self-explanatory, that's the rate that's applied to all the debt. The lowest utilized price, this is where, so everybody's depositing into the specific bucket that they want to lend at. This is saying, do not lend out my quote token at a price higher than this. But as borrowers come to the pool, they have to borrow down sequentially. So if there's two deposits in the pool, if there's 100 USDC at 1,000 and then 100 USDC at 900, and I come and I want to borrow 200 USDC, the lowest utilized price will be 900, because first I'll be borrowing from the bucket with the at 1,000, and then I'll be borrowing the 100 from the bucket at 900. And this basically creates a moving target where, as borrowers come to the protocol, the more demand there is for loans, they will keep pushing this price down because it's like an order book. And the less demand there is for loans, they'll keep pushing the price up because as they pay back, it pays back sequentially up the buckets. Total encumbered collateral. This is the debt divided by the LUP. So this is how we decide the minimum collateralization of everything. So every loan needs to be collateralized versus the lowest utilized price. The pool collateralization is the total available collateral, which is like all the collateral that's in the system, but not necessarily encumbered by it, divided by total encumbered collateral. And I believe I explained the pool threshold price a little bit above. It's total debt divided by total collateral posted. The highest threshold price, or the HTP, I'll add that there, is it's maintained in the linked list and points to the least collateralized loan. This is important because one of the rules in the system is that you cannot withdraw a deposit if it would cause the lowest utilized price to go below the highest threshold price. So basically we say that the lowest utilized price always needs to be above the least collateralized loan. And this is so you can't steal people's deposits.
Greg, sorry to interrupt. There's a slight inaccuracy here, just from an implementation perspective. It's the loans are maintained in a heap data structure by threshold price, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So it's yeah, so that should be correct.
Sorry. We have a variable called liquidation debt. This is the total amount of debt currently in liquidation. So if a loan gets liquidated and that it's still pending, like there's an auction taking place, we increment liquidation debt by the amount of debt until that auction has cleared. That'll be relevant later because we actually freeze that amount on the top of the book. The MOMP is the most optimistic matching price. It's the price at which a loan of average size, so the average size loan in the pool, would match with the most favorable lenders in the book, meaning the top deposits. So if we go back to our example of USDC and ETH, if we say there's $100 in 1,000 and $100 in 900, if the average loan is $100, the MOMP is 1,000 because that's where that $100 would match. If we say the average loan is $150, well, now it goes down to 900. It's just going to take the average loan and pull down from the top of the book and tell you where that would match. We use this to price liquidation auctions. So
so it's not average, it's just list, the least price for that volume.
It's the lowest price where the average loan would match.
I mean, in your example, you kind of take 90% of your loan from the top bucket, but obtain price from the next one. Is it correct?
Well, so the MOMP has nothing to do with actual borrowers. So like, let's say the book is borrowed down to 600, right? Let's say there's $1,000 of quote token in the pool and the lowest utilized price is 600, but the average loan is 100. And the top bucket 1,000 has 100 quote token in it. That's the MOMP. That's the most optimistic matching price. It's where the average loan would most optimistically be matched if it was hypothetically the first loan in the pool.
Yeah, and what if it exceeds this and should utilize several buckets?
Maybe I'm missing the question, but if you're saying if it exceeds the what?
The top bucket, say it's 100, 1,000, and it's your loan is 1,000 and a half.
So let's say it covered 3 price buckets. It would
Yeah,
pick
yeah.
the lowest price bucket.
It goes to the lowest one, yes.
Okay, even it's just touched by a dust amount.
That's right.
Okay, and one more question. Maybe you wanted to cover this later, but in absence of oracles, how do this liquidation mechanics will work when certain loan is marked for to be liquidatable?
Excellent question. Yes, that's going to be a whole section.
Okay.
That's we have a mechanism that we've created called liquidation
Yeah.
bonds that achieve that. Okay, so lender inputs the price and the quote token amount. The borrower inputs the collateral amount, the amount of debt they want to withdraw, and the position in the linked list of loans. Because we keep a linked list of loan. Wait, this is sale, isn't it, guys?
Yeah, there should be a heap of loans. The loans are stored in a heap data structure.
I thought the loans are stored in the Fenwick tree.
No,
Yeah,
the loans are in a heap and the deposits are in the Fenwick tree.
Understood.
Yeah,
Okay.
a max heap is what the loans are stored in. If you
And
just,
but-
as you go through this and we catch stuff, you could just highlight it and say flagged, and then we can come back to it. But yeah, it should be a max heap for the loans.
Okay. So liquidity
Maybe
management.
Greg, high level, maybe do you want to explain like just the book, the discretization of the prices, encumbered versus non-encumbered collateral, deposit, and the LUP, just as like a high level before you dive into the detail?
Can I just do that? Do you not understand any of that, Dimitri?
Well, yeah.
Like so.
Yeah, you better repeat from the start.
Okay, so you as a lender deposit into a bucket. Each bucket is discretized in the sense that each one is 0.5% away from the other buckets. Similar to when you go to a Uniswap pool and there's all those ticks.
Yeah.
The borrowers, they borrow based on where the utilization is in the pool. So if the lowest utilized price is 600 and a new borrower comes along, they're going to borrow at 600, then sequentially downwards. And as they do that, their collateral becomes encumbered, meaning they can't withdraw it based on the LUP. So if the LUP goes down, it'll encumber more of their collateral. If it goes up, it'll encumber less of their collateral. Just like any other lending market. And as your interest goes up, it encumbers more collateral as well.
Okay.
Okay. So liquidity management. I don't know how in depth you want to go here. I think it's pretty intuitive. Like honestly, like I think it may make more sense to go through the white paper now that I'm looking at this. Like the spec is kind of all over the place. The white paper is in a better order. So I'm going to switch and let me know if you thought this was more intuitive. But let's go. But yeah, this is much better. Let's start with creating a pool. So one of the first actions you'll take as a user of Ajna is you'll want to create a pool. You create a pool using the factory contract. You can create either a fungible pool. This is where the quote token and the collateral token are both fungible. Or you create a non-fungible pool where the quote token is still fungible, but the collateral is an NFT. And we have two different pool contracts that accomplish this. The pool structure, as we discussed, it's broken into price buckets, discretized or spaced at 0.5% apart. And one is the bucket 3232. We included this because we think that stable to stable pools will be pretty relevant. So we wanted to make sure that the number one was included in those buckets, but otherwise they could be really random numbers. A price bucket consists of the following: the quote token that's sitting inside of it, so the deposit, the claimable collateral. This is, as I discussed, like you could always trade collateral and quote token fungibly at the price of the bucket. So if the price is 10,000, I can put in 1 ETH and draw out 10,000 USDC, or I can put in 10,000 USDC, draw out 1 ETH. Like you could trade within the bucket itself. And then there's the total LPB. And this is for all of the people who have deposited into the bucket, they get a balance. We call that liquidity provider balance. It shows their pro rata share of that bucket. So if I deposit 10 quote token into the bucket, and now there's 100 quote token to the bucket, I own 10% of that bucket. That's what I get. That's what I claim. I can optionally mint an NFT that represents that position. So loans, when we come to the pool, we pledge collateral, we borrow quote token, your debt is recorded as a loan. For loans secured by NFTs, there's an additional mapping in the contract which specifies exactly which NFT belongs to you, so it doesn't get mixed up in the pool. When you borrow, it triggers an origination fee. This origination fee is set to the lower or the higher of 1 week of interest or 5 basis points. And we do this because we don't want people to manipulate interest rates. You'll see later when we talk about it, but there is an attack vector where if we didn't have this fee, somebody could take out a large loan basically in one block just to manipulate the interest rate. So we make sure that gets expensive. Each pool accumulates and maintains reserves. So reserves accumulate in 3 ways. They accumulate from a fee that we place on early withdrawals. So there's also a fee on early withdrawal. So if you come to the pool and you withdraw within 24 hours, you get charged a fee for doing that. If you move your deposit from above the pool threshold price to below the pool threshold price within 24 hours, you get hit with a fee. These fees accumulate in the reserves. The origination fees on new loans also accumulate in the reserves. And by the way, that early withdrawal fee is there for the same reason as the origination fee. It's a mitigation against an attack vector where somebody can make an extremely large deposit for a short period of time, mess up the pool utilization, and subsequently mess up interest rates. So we don't let them, we charge them to do that in a way that would be more expensive than manipulating the rate. And then finally, every loan accumulates a net interest margin that goes to reserves. So we have a table that shows how this net interest margin is set. But just as an example, let's say that the borrow rate is 5%. So all borrowers are paying 5%. We then take out, another 0.5% of that. And then now 4.5% is going to lenders. So there's always a spread between what lenders are earning, and all lenders earn the same interest, and what borrowers are paying. And that spread goes to the reserves. The specific equation for calculating reserves are the debt plus the balance in the pool. So this is the quote token in the pool, minus the deposit across price buckets, minus anything in liquidation bonds, and minus the balance of the current collateral reserve auction, which I'll talk about later, but that's how we get rid of reserves. So this is more a technical piece, but if you were trying to figure out the exact number of reserves at any given time, this is the formula that tells you that. So we discussed deposit a lot at this point, but let me just skim this and see if there's anything in here that we should want to go over. Here's a good graphic. So the blue here is utilized deposit. This is deposit that has been lent out. And you can see it went down sequentially as people borrowed. That makes, because 80 is the lowest price bucket that has deposit that's lent out, that makes it the lowest utilized price, and it's the LUP. 75 is where the least collateralized loan is. That's why it's the HTP. And if the guy at 90 wanted to pull his 210,000 and basically put it down at 75, where that's because the debt would have to be reallocated, then he might need to kick off a liquidation if it's going to move the LUP below the HTP. And the white here is deposit that is not getting paid interest. So anything that's colored is getting paid interest and it's getting the same interest rate. The white is not getting paid interest because it's below the highest threshold price. And only deposits above the highest threshold price get paid interest. So you could have one block where you're getting paid interest, and then the HTP moves up and you're no longer getting paid interest.
Naive question again. You said that area in blue is utilized, but both blue and orange receive interest.
That's right.
So the orange, so to say, some interest are channeled to the orange part, even if it's not really utilized.
That's right. Because the reason that we want to pay the orange is because they are providing liquidity for the utilized depositors. So like, to use a specific example, if the person at 90 and only the person at 90 pulled their deposits, so 210,000, because putting that 210,000 below the highest utilized price would definitionally not trigger a liquidation, because we know that every loan can facilitate that being the LUP. Then they could do that easily. There would be no liquidation that needs to get triggered, because they're taking out their deposit and they're giving the debt to a lower bucket, but that lower bucket is still above the least collateralized loan, so we know that it can accept it.
Okay.
I just discussed the early withdrawal penalty. Told you could optionally mint an NFT that represents your LPB. Just so you know, like we used something pretty novel to achieve all of this. We use Fenwick trees, which are a type of binary index tree. And that's how we maintain the balances of all the deposits. And also that's how we accumulate interest. So you'll see that in the code, but that's just a heads up.
And just to touch on that, it's a modified version of Fenwick tree. So it's actually a scaled Fenwick tree, which is somewhat novel in invention, which is what Matt on our team came up with. So it's a modified version of the Fenwick tree. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so borrowing. On the left, we have an example of a properly collateralized loan. So the rule for whether your loan is considered sufficiently collateralized and therefore is either eligible or ineligible for liquidation is whether the LUP is above your threshold price. Now, the threshold price of your loan is just your debt divided by your collateral. It's where the pool would break even in a liquidation. So if you borrowed $100 against 100 units of collateral, your threshold price is 1. That makes sense? But you will need to be collateralized below the LUP. So here we have the LUP at 80, and we've made the threshold price 60. Now somebody comes to the pool and they start borrowing down lower. Once the LUP goes below your threshold price or is going below your threshold price, anybody can liquidate your loan. Now we'll talk later about why they probably won't liquidate your loan, but it renders your loan eligible for liquidation. This is interest accumulation. Just shows, this is more a technical note. You can read that on your own. Origination fee, we discussed this. We have a minimum borrow size. This is to prevent dust. So our minimum borrow is 10% of the average loan size. So we take the debt of the pool, we divide it by the count of loans, and we multiply it by 0.1 to determine whether you have a minimum borrow. This also comes into effect during liquidations because we won't let somebody leave a dust loan in the protocol. If they're going to take collateral, they can't leave dust. They're bound by the same formula. The trade functionality, I described this earlier, but every bucket treats collateral and quote token fungible at its price. So this is where the top, like if you think about the top of the book, if somebody just forgets their deposit there, they're going to get arbitraged out through this trade functionality because you'll come and you'll give them collateral and take their quote token off the book. Now, of course, that can only be done if it doesn't violate any other rules like pushing the LUP below the HTP, but assuming it doesn't, you can arbitrage people out of the book. And vice versa. If the price goes up and there's somebody who has collateral in a bucket, you can put in quote token and take out the collateral. You can always exchange in a bucket. Okay, liquidation. As we discussed, the criteria for liquidation is when the threshold price of your loan, so your debt divided by collateral is at or below the lowest utilized price. So now when you want to liquidate somebody, you call kick. I'm going to skip around a little because this is talked about later, but it's important. When you call kick, you need to post a bond. So we have a loan that's eligible for liquidation. The threshold price is the same price as the LUP. In order to trigger a liquidation on this loan, you need to post a liquidation bond. This liquidation bond is priced as a percentage of the debt based on the distance from the MOMP to the, here, I'll go to the formulas. Wait, where are they? Where is it? Sorry, based on the difference between the MOMP and the neutral price and your threshold price. Now, the neutral price is going to be the MOMP, which is what we discussed earlier, plus some modifications. But effectively, we are trying to force liquidators to take a bet on the outcome of the auction. So if I kick your loan into liquidation, your loan was stamped when you took it out with what we call the neutral price. You can think of this like your liquidation trigger price. This is where it becomes economical to liquidate you. So going back to our example, let's say that ETH is trading $1,500 and I've borrowed at $1,000. When I borrow, if the MOMP at that time is around, let's say 1,300, and then we add a year of interest onto that, let's say that my neutral price is 1,310. That gets stamped on my loan and it's updated every time I modify my loan. But let's just for argument's sake say I don't touch my loan. My neutral price is 1,310. The market price that only I know is 1,500. Now the market starts trading down. My loan becomes eligible for liquidation because somebody pushed the LUP down to my threshold price, and the market is now 1,300. It is now profitable to kick my loan. So I'm going to post a liquidation bond. That bond is going to be calculated based on these formulas. And what will happen is this is the payoff curve. So if the auction clears up here, so above or anywhere between 1,310 and 1,000, then I'm going to make money. If it clears anywhere above 1,310 and 2 times my neutral price minus threshold price, then I'm going to lose money. So basically, we disincentivize spurious liquidations by forcing people to make a bet on the outcome of the auction. So how does the auction work? The auction looks like this. The first hour is a grace period. You cannot take the collateral, but the borrower can repay. They are penalized for doing that with, I believe we add 90 days of interest to their loan the moment they're kicked. After the first hour, if they don't recollateralize, we begin a reverse Dutch auction that starts at 32 times the MOMP. And here, if you don't take basically the half-life is an hour. So by 6 hours, we reach the MOMP itself. If nobody's taken the collateral, now anyone can actually start pushing it into the book. So when that liquidation kicked off, it froze that liquidation debt variable of deposit at the top of the book. So let's just for argument's sake say that this loan was the exact size of the average loan in the pool. So this is the $100 loan, the average loan size is $100, and the top bucket has 100 quote token in it. That means that the MOMP is going to be 100, and by hour 6, the price of the reverse Dutch auction is going to be the same price as the top of the book, which is frozen. Anybody can now call a function that pushes that debt into that bucket, converts that bucket to collateral, and cancels out the debt. Conversely, they also could have called the take function at any time before that and paid more for the collateral and paid quote token in, taken the collateral out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and this concludes the auction or it continues?
The auction continues until all the collateral is gone or all the debt is extinguished. It has a 72-hour cap though. So after 72 hours, the price will be 0. If nobody bid, you can clear the auction and take the collateral. And then we have bad debt, and that's handled in the Fenwick trees where we have to actually now go down and cancel out that debt from the deposits. This is probably the most complex module in the system, the liquidations.
I just want to say there is a possibility that, for instance, collateral gets bought at a comparatively high price, and that pays down enough of the debt with the remaining collateral that the loan is then fully collateralized again, and then it exits from auction. It just becomes a normal loan.
Okay.
Yes. So
Quick question. Do you have some threshold so TP and NP don't end up too close?
if what doesn't end up too close?
Neutral price and target price, as far as I recall. This payoff graph.
Oh yes, so the neutral price uses the threshold price in its calculation. So it can never be the same. If you want to see the formula, it's one of these. Hold on.
Greg, what on the left side? Why don't you click on the, and then you can find things easier.
Good point. Yeah, determining the neutral. So this is how we calculate the neutral price. We take 1 year of interest, we multiply it by the MOMP, and then we multiply it by the ratio of the threshold price to the neutral price, and then we set it back to times 0 basically, so that we can increment it later. This last part is more of an implementation detail. The first 3 variables are the more relevant one. This is what really determines neutral price at any given point in time. Because the reason we have this is the borrower inflator. This is how we increment the neutral price for interest over time.
Just for my understanding, if, for example, MOMP and lowest price equal each other and rate is 0, you can have neutral price equal to threshold.
Right. In that case, it would be, because the 1 plus rate is like a year's worth of interest. It would be, the neutral price would be the threshold price adjusted for a year's worth of interest. In that case, so the neutral price would be, let's say the interest rate were 10%. Then the neutral price would be 10% above the threshold price.
Okay, and you do not allow interest rate to go negative.
Correct.
Yeah, the goal here is that the neutral price represents the buffer over the break even of the loan where we want it to get liquidated. So if you think about another lending protocol like MakerDAO, you come there and they give you 150% collateralization ratio. That's saying that like your break even's 100, your in this system, your neutral price will be 150. And anytime, as soon as you go below 150, it's now you can get liquidated. Okay. Yeah, I would highly recommend just like reading through all this over the weekend or on Monday to try to like internalize the formulas, because they're not as complex as they look. And I think once you like see them a couple times, they'll make more sense. Here's our different functions for taking collateral in an auction. So again, it's a reverse Dutch auction. So there's always a discrete price at which you can buy the collateral. You could do take, which means you send quote token and you extract the collateral. You could do deposit take, which means that you push the collateral into a bucket and use the deposit in the bucket to convert from quote token to collateral, and that cancels the debt. Or we have arb take, and this is where we offer an incentive to call deposit take, because if you let the price of the auction go below the highest deposits, now you can push it into a lower bucket and atomically push it into a higher bucket and take the difference for yourself. Basically a form of arbitrage and liquidation to ensure that debt gets matched with the book once the auction has not produced an outcome prior to the frozen deposits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we discussed liquidation debt. This is just where the amount of debt in liquidation starts to freeze deposit at the top of the book sequentially downwards, so that those people cannot withdraw in a liquidation because they might get put with collateral. Settling is, as I discussed, after 72 hours if the auction did not get rid of all its collateral or still has remaining debt, anybody can call settle and clear it out. Interest rates. So this is where, remember the target utilization? This is where we compare the meaningful actual deposit to the target utilization. And we use this relationship to determine whether rates should be changed or not changed. And if it's in this side, if it's in this quadrant, then they should be decreased. If it's in this one, it should be increased. And basically what we do is every 12 hours, if the pool is out of equilibrium based on this definition, based on this relationship of meaningful actual utilization to target utilization, somebody can change rates in the direction of the disequilibrium by 10%. So to give you an example, let's say that the meaningful actual utilization of the pool is 90%. So 90% of the deposits over the pool threshold price are lent out. But on the other side, we only have 50% of the pool wants there to be 50% lent out. So we have 40% too much deposits lent out. You need to increase rates because we need people to pay back or we need new deposits to come to the pool. So while this disequilibrium persists, every 12 hours, a function is called that allows interest rates to be increased by 10%. And this function is callable until we get back into the no change zone. That makes sense?
Yeah, and it's callable without delays between the calls.
It's callable every 12 hours.
So
once
every
it's
call,
called, you need to wait 12 hours to call it again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's automatically called for most actions people take in the system, but it can also be called in isolation. Okay, so that there was like the core system. I now I can move on to like some supplementary things that we have, but are there any questions on the core system?
Well, regarding liquidity, I mean, this is a general question, but still, so then first thought when you see such setup, it's something like, what if you have highly unequal liquidity, say thin upper buckets and sudden rise in liquidity when you go down? Is it can it be manipulated by just pushing it to? I mean, if you have too few, if you need too few resources to push price to something valuable, for example, we have lots of thin buckets and one thick bucket, and you can go through all thin buckets cheaply. It might make sense to reach it even well, if it's not related to market price anyhow. I mean, you said that there is additional penalties, but these penalties are calculated off these volumes of thin buckets. But if they are small, this penalty also became small. So, something like that. I mean, you surely thought about such type of manipulations.
Yeah. So the short answer to your question is that the further you get away from the MOP, the bigger the liquidation bond you have to post is. So the MOP is something that you really can't manipulate because it's just the highest price buckets matched with the average loan. And then even then we start the auctions at 32 times that number. So we know we're never going to give, or actually I believe in the code, we even use a fallback where it says whatever's higher, the MOP or the neutral price, because we want to just make sure we use the highest reasonable number to start an auction. And then we multiply that number by 32. That way that we know the Dutch auction starts above the market price. Now, what'll happen is the further you get away from your neutral price in terms of a liquidation, the bigger the liquidation bond's going to be. So it caps out at 30% of your debt. So if you borrowed $1 million and somebody wants to liquidate you, but you really shouldn't be liquidated, they're going to pay $300,000 to liquidate you. And then let's say that they shouldn't have done it. You get full recovery on your loan. You get all your money back and they lose $300,000.
So another way to put this, or sorry, maybe just I'll give kind of another high level reasoning here is like, we have this mechanism, which is the LUP, and that's based off of lending and borrowing, their relationship, how much borrowers' debt they've drawn in relationship to the amount of deposit that lenders have lent. And that controls the LUP, which is the lowest utilized price. And so that's what borrowers are liquidated against, right? They're collateralized in relationship to that price. So the truth of the matter in Ajna is people can actually move the LUP up or down, right? It costs them money to do it, but they could do it, right? So they can't actually manipulate the book in that sense. So what the auction mechanism so geniusly does, and the bond mechanism specifically, is it works as a kind of a backstop pricing mechanism to ensure that if a borrower is sent to liquidation prematurely, we have another way for the market to discover the true value of the collateral in the event that someone's attempting to manipulate the LUP maliciously.
And as a situation, it might not even get manipulated, but market can move during this period.
Yeah, and if the market moves, then we want them to get liquidated.
Yeah, the volatility of these cryptos, especially since it's a permissionless product, can be really high for a lot of these tokens. So we want to make sure we're protecting borrowers against that if the price is moving too rapidly too soon or what have you.
So if a price moved say lower market price, I mean bigger market price, you just have a situation when not enough loans are marked for liquidation, and they will be just catched up in the next cry. And is it correct, right?
Well, once the market moves down to a point where
I mean, since you frozen in advance, mark loans for liquidation in advance, when for example, market is experience a sharp downfall, and by the time of auction, all this actually more loans, say twice more loans, should be marked for liquidation, but it will not be the case. Only ones that were previously earmarked, they are the only ones that will be auctioned, and the next part will go to the next auction.
Well, but the moment that it's profitable to liquidate a loan, we imagine it will be liquidated. And even if it's not, anyone who wants to withdraw their deposit to get it out of the way, they will have to do so without pushing the LUP below the highest threshold price. So there is there's a strict floor on how many deposits can be removed.
Yeah, I mean, this floor is dynamic. If you are inside the auction and some loans that weren't previously marked to be subject of this auction, they are now actually also liquidable because of broader market movements. So will this latter part will subject to auction as well or not? That's the question.
Any time the market price, which is known by the external actors, not by the protocol, goes below the neutral price of a loan, it now becomes profitable to liquidate that loan. So the moment that happens, they'll kick it into liquidation.
Okay.
Am I
So
understanding?
we
Maybe I'm understanding your question.
yeah. I mean, on one hand, you say that they are eligible for liquidation. On the another hand, there is liquidation auctions. And what I'm trying to understand here is, does this liquidation happens instantly, or they are just marked to be liquidated in auction that will take place by its own
You're
schedule?
saying when somebody calls kick on a loan and pushes it to liquidation.
Yeah, so it's earmarked or it's liquidated right away.
It goes into a 1 hour grace period. So it's technically in liquidation, but nobody can buy the collateral for 1 hour because we give that hour as an opportunity for the borrower to recollateralize. After that 1 hour, the auction starts.
So the auction actually starts atomically for all the loans. So it's not some pool that is being auctioned. It's a single loan, a single bucket.
Yes, single loan.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to jump in here and offer?
Yeah, I mean, so multiple loans can be auctioned off at the same time in series, and like another way to kind of think of the lenders are also like when they do a deposit, like their worst case situation is they'll end up buying the collateral at that price bucket. So they should be aware of it. Now there's a possibility they don't have to buy it, but when a lender places quote token at a particular price bucket, you know, in a long-term thinking, they could end up buying the collateral at that price bucket. So that's another way to kind of have the lenders think about it. And yes, you could have multiple loans in auction. And, but they're all independent, by the way. They're independent loans in auction, but they cannot. But multiple of them can be happening. Does that answer your question, Dimitri? Or
Yeah. So these loans, they can be from different buckets, from different be attributed to different prices.
Well, loans, there can only be one borrower to one loan. So yes, multiple loans.
Multiple loans in a single auction can have different prices.
I mean, one thing to know is that loans are not tied to buckets per se. There's no affinity between a loan and particular buckets. Loans have a threshold price, which is the ratio of their debt to the collateral. So, you know, that is the price at which they, you know, like if the average price got for the collateral was their threshold price in an auction, it would exactly cover their debt. The neutral price, they also have a neutral price associated to them, which, as we talked about, is somewhat higher than that, which is the price at which you could kick off the auction and neither be penalized nor earn an external reward for having kicked off the auction.
I can take a stab at this too. I mean, I think the big thing here is to mention that Ajna is pool to peer. So what that means is the lenders are aggregating the liquidity. So they insert into these different price buckets, but really all of that, you know, quote token is aggregated. And then the borrowers, of course, are going to want to borrow the best, you know, the best offer, right? They're going to want to borrow from lenders who are offering the best price for their collateral. So they're going to borrow from the top price buckets downwards. And then, as Matt had just mentioned there's no direct association between the loans and the actual price buckets themselves at all. The thing that makes a loan liquidatable is the threshold price of that loan in relationship to the collateralization, or excuse me, in relationship to the price of the loan. So what price bucket is the loan at? So we have 5 more minutes. I want to make sure, Dimitri, do that.
Yeah. Let's continue. It's actually nuanced.
I don't know about you, Dimitri, but I can stay on till 1:15. I don't know what time you have to hop, but
Yeah, sure. Extra
Okay.
15 minutes is achievable.
For the record, Dimitri, we are willing to give you as much of our time as you want. So if you want to be on here all day, you let us know. Cool. Because there's 2 more sections as well, which I don't know if we want to just do a high-level overview versus a detailed overview, and that's governance and staking. That might be a good next step. I don't know, however you want to drive, Greg.
yeah, I'll just briefly go through the Ajna token, what it does, and the other contracts you'll be seeing in relation to it. So, as I said, every pool accumulates reserves. Once those reserves reach a certain threshold, which, as you can see in this formula, is 0.995 times the debt, then they are eligible to be auctioned off. These reserves can only be auctioned off for Ajna tokens. This is what gives the Ajna token values. So let's say that, as an example, a pool has accumulated 1 million quote token reserves. The way that anybody can come now and call that collateral reserve auction, sorry, I should say an exit and claimable reserves, because there is a portion of the reserves that are unclaimable. So it's accumulated 1 million claimable reserves in USDC. What happens now is anybody can come trigger a collateral reserve auction, and in doing so, they immediately claim 1% of the reserves for themselves. This is to incentivize any actor to come to the pool and trigger this auction. Once the auction is triggered, we use another reverse Dutch auction to sell the reserves. It's at this time, the reverse Dutch auction is denominated in Ajna tokens and starts at 1 billion. So the entire supply of Ajna, the maximum supply there could ever be. Every hour it will have until it reaches the right price of the reserves, and somebody sends in quote token, sends in Ajna token, withdraws quote token reserves, and those Ajna tokens are irreparably burned. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. That's what gives the Ajna token value. The utility of the Ajna token is a system that we call grant coordination. This is where, on a quarterly basis, there is a treasury holding 30% of the Ajna tokens that each quarter distributes 3% of its supply. And it distributes that 3% based off of these funding mechanisms. So the first one that we should discuss is the primary funding mechanism. The primary funding mechanism goes on the 90-day cycle. The first 80 days we call a screening stage. This is where anybody can just vote on any proposal. What happens at the end of the screening stage is the top 10 proposals make it to the funding stage. In the funding stage, we use quadratic voting to determine which share of that 3% budget goes to each proposal. And then once the 10 days end, anybody can call the function and claim what they have earned from the treasury. There's also an extraordinary funding mechanism. This is where, let's say, like, for some reason, there's just very high consensus that we need to pull out a large percentage of the treasury. If you meet this arbitrary threshold that we've set, which is 50% of the Ajna supply, which is basically saying 50% of tokens that are not in the treasury that are on the Ethereum mainnet, then you can draw out 1% for every additional percentage that you have. So if you get a quorum of 60%, you can draw out up to 10% of the treasury. Just going to hop back to the spec to go through the staking contract. So remember how I said you can optionally mint an NFT when you provide liquidity on Ajna as a lender?
Mm-hmm.
So we've built an external staking pool contract that we're also going to put a substantial amount of the Ajna supply in, that will distribute Ajna tokens to lenders based on how much Ajna that pool has burned in reserve auctions. So if your pool burns reserve auctions, it'll be entitled, sorry, if it burns 100 Ajna in a reserve auction, it'll be entitled for a fraction of 100 Ajna from this staking contract. And the way this staking contract will distribute that is based off of how much interest you've earned in the pool relative to other people staking. So you take your LPB NFT, you stake it in this staking contract, and then we track how much interest you've accumulated over the period between two collateral reserve auctions. And then you get to claim your pro rata share of the reward for being part of the auction pool. I don't think I did a very good job explaining that.
No. So I mean, interest rates are high when there is big demand. So you give more tokens to people who are staking, who are participating in the system when the demand is bigger. Well, makes sense.
Yep, it's liquidity mining basically.
Mm.
But it's we put that, we base it off of how much Ajna has been burned in reserve auctions, because that can't be manipulated. Because otherwise you could figure out a way to extract more Ajna tokens from the pool than have been burned. If we cap it at what's been burned, then you can never manipulate the system.
I mean, first thing that comes to mind, interest rates can be tiny, can go.
But it's your
Yeah.
share of the interest that matters. So if you were one of 10
okay.
depositors and you earned 10% of the interest, you will get 10% of the distribution. It's not tracking absolute interest. It's tracking what percentage of the total interest your position represented.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. That way, if you're a really good lender and you're earning a lot of interest relative to everybody else, you'll get rewarded the most, because we want to reward people who are being competitive. And that's it.
So,
Okay.
Greg, you said you have 15 minutes. Do you think it would be worth it to go through the actors document? Because that's another way of looking at the system, and it's maybe a simpler way of looking at it.
Yeah, and we'll share all these docs with you, by the way. So these are the actors' roles and capabilities. We went over most of these, but there's pool creator. They create Ajna pools using the pool factory. They have to specify an interest rate between 1% and 10%, and they have to specify the quote token and the collateral token. They call deploy pool to do this. So we've outlined all of the external functions that would be called here to do each action. Lenders, they deposit quote token into an Ajna pool with the intention of lending it out. They can add quote token, they can move quote token, they can remove quote token, and they can remove collateral, or they can transfer their internal system balance to another address. Each of these then has a subsequent function that can be used if you're using the NFT rather than the internal system balance. So if you want to add quote token and mint an NFT, you call mint. If you want to move your quote token when you have an NFT, you call move liquidity. And if you want to remove your quote token when you have an NFT, you call redeem positions. Borrowers, they borrow quote token by pledging collateral. They can call draw debt, which allows them to draw debt and pledge collateral, or repay debt, which allows them to repay debt and or withdraw collateral. Now, if you just want to pledge additional collateral or you just want to withdraw collateral, you still call this function. You just put 0 in the debt category. Traders, they arbitrage the pool by depositing collateral into a price bucket with the intention of removing quote token, or deposit quote token with the intention of removing collateral. They can use similar functions to the others. They can call add collateral, they can call add quote token, they can call remove quote token, they call remove collateral. So this is really just a subset of existing functions where they're specifically the ones that a trader would use to interact with the system. Kickers,
and all this happens immediately, right? All trading have no delay.
These are all immediate. That's right. Kickers, they kick delinquent loans into auctions. So they call kick. That allows a kicker to push an eligible loan into liquidation using external quote token to post the liquidation bond. Kick with deposit. This allows them to push an existing lender to push a loan into liquidation using their own deposit that's already in the pool. So if you have a deposit in the pool, you can use that deposit to post a liquidation bond. You don't need to get external quote token to kick a loan.
Mhm.
Settle, that's what we talked about after 72 hours. You call that to clear an auction if it still has bad debt or collateral. And withdraw bonds is what you call once your liquidation bond is claimable and it's either been penalized or rewarded. Bidders, they participate in collateral liquidation auctions by purchasing collateral with external quote token or using existing deposit in the pool to clear the auction. Take, this is where they trade external quote token in an auction. So this is where if the auction's at a higher price and they want to buy the collateral, they send quote token, they buy the collateral, it cancels out the debt in the amount of quote token that they've put in. Bucket take, with the tag of deposit take equals false, this is informally what we call ARB take. This is where you buy collateral in an auction and immediately put the collateral into a higher priced bucket than the one you used to purchase it with in order to extract an arbitrage profit based on the difference in price between the two buckets. Similarly, you can call bucket take with deposit take equals true. This is what we call deposit take. And this is where you just push collateral into a bucket and cause that bucket to buy the collateral. You're not doing any sort of arbitrage here. Reserve purchasers. This is the collateral reserve auctions. They can start a claimable reserve auction, as we discussed, or they can take reserves by sending Ajna tokens. These are now general stakeholders that are just interested in the well-being of the pool. They can call update interest rate. This is to update the interest rates every 12 hours. They could also call accrue interest, which accrues interest on all the loans. Flash borrowers. So Ajna supports flash loans. You can borrow either quote token or collateral token from any pool, and you call flash loan to do that. That's the main protocol. Now, the other mechanisms, the Ajna, the grant coordination and the staking contract, Ajna token holders, they have three functions they call in the process of grant coordination. They can call delegate, which allows them to delegate their tokens to somebody else to vote. They can call start new distribution period. This triggers the start of a new voting cycle. And they can call cast vote. This is how they vote on proposals in both the screening stage, the funding stage, and the extraordinary funding mechanism. Grant proposers. These are people who want to extract Ajna tokens from the treasuries by making a proposal. They can propose a standard. It's short for standard proposal. It allows a proposer to submit a standard proposal. They can also call extraordinary funding proposal, which allows them to propose an extraordinary funding proposal. Delegates, they vote on behalf of Ajna token holders who have delegated to them. They can call cast vote, and they can call claim delegate rewards. In the system, 10% of all distributions are reserved for delegates. So if 9 million Ajna tokens are distributed in the first voting cycle, 900,000 of those tokens will go to delegates, and the other 8.1 million will go to the various proposals. And the delegates claim using that function. Lender staking. So this is where we said they stake their LPB NFT into the staking contract, which distributes Ajna tokens to the lender in exchange for providing useful liquidity. We determine the utility of their liquidity by the relative amount of interest that they've earned in the pool. They can claim rewards. This allows the staker to claim the rewards owed to them from the staking contract. They can stake their token. They can unstake their token, and they can update exchange rates. This is a bit of a peculiarity of the staking contract. The staking contract has to be segregated into buckets, just like the pool. Every bucket has its own exchange rate, and somebody needs to memorialize that to let everyone in the bucket know what they can claim. This allows anybody to update that exchange rate for a specific price bucket, which makes the rewards in that bucket claimable for that epoch, and epoch being defined as the time between the two collateral reserve auctions that we're measuring. And the person who calls this actually takes 5% of all the rewards for themselves. So there's an external incentive to call this, just like there's an external incentive to call start claimable reserve auction. And that's all of them.
Okay, thank you. Small question. What about liquidation of staked lenders? How does it work?
Liquidation of staked lenders. Lenders aren't liquidated. Only borrowers.
Oh,
are liquidated.
okay. So in order to stake, you need to mint an NFT. Without an NFT, you can't stake.
That's right. And if you want to change anything about your position, you need to unstake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for this kind of yield contract, only the lenders are being rewarded. Borrowers are not being rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
The lenders have the harder job in Ajna, so that's why there's some mechanism to reward them.
And for the delegation, the rewards aren't linked to some periods of delegation took place. It's just binary, right?
What was that?
I mean, for the delegation rewards, the mechanics is a snapshot based, or again, time of involvement based.
Is Mike on the call? He can probably answer that the best. Or one of the engineers.
I might be able to. Sorry, Dimitri, can you ask it one more time?
It's simple. I just asked if this rewards for delegation. I mean, I'm a delegate. I received a delegation just now. Am I able to claim the reward, or it's just it's time based, like proportional to the time I hold this delegation?
Oh, sorry. It's for each voting cycle, and it's only if you've participated in both stages.
So it's binary, but it's per cycle. Okay.
Yes.
And one more question regarding the very beginning of this doc for interest rates between 1 and 10%. Is it hard-coded? And am I right that this is just the initial interest rate, or?
That's right. An initial interest rate, and the pool creator gets to pick the initial one, but then the moment they deploy the pool, the interest rate mechanism kicks in to set the right rate. So we give them the flexibility to deploy it anywhere between 1 and 10%, but once it's deployed, they need it, everything goes through the centralized rate mechanism.
And what's the rationale of limiting this? I mean, what's the issue when market drives the rate too much? For example, suppose it's 50% and deployed by at 10%. Is there any issues there?
Well, so given the 12-hour constraint on changing rates, it takes 3.5 days to either double or halve the rate. So if somebody started the pool at 50%, it's going to take quite some time to get that. And let's say they started at 10,000%. It's going to take a long time to get it down to the right rate. That's why we said, look, the majority of all interest rates are between 1 and 10%. No matter, even if they fuck with it and they put it at 1 or 10%, the worst they can do is cause like 3 to 6 days of friction before it reaches the right price. And if the right rate is 50%, it'll take, maybe, a week to get up there if they started at 10. Because it'll double first 3.5 days, it'll double to 20. Second 3.5 days, so by day 7, it'll be 40. And then a couple days later, it'll be 50.
Okay, and what if it's 100% 1 pips to the true interest rate?
Yeah, then it'll start at 10 and it'll double to 20, 1 doubling, 40, 80, and a half.
No. I mean, you have 1 percentage point, 100 pips as a lower bound. What if true rate is 1 pips?
You're saying the current interest rate is 100%, but the real rate is 1%.
I think he's saying basis points, so like
Yeah,
0.01%.
basis points. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you started at 10%. Well, then it's going to halve to 5%, halve to 2.5%, halve to 1.25%, halve, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until it reaches the right rate.
Okay, I'm just saying it might make sense to widen this range if it's hard-coded on factor level.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you have feedback on what you think the range should be, happy to listen to that, of course.
Well, I mean, such fixed numbers is like a red flag, you know. Okay, thank you very much. It's much clearer now. You
Great.
really touched many points in one protocol.
Should be fun to audit.
close. Yeah.
What's the best way to communicate going forward? Like, we're obviously available 24/7.
Yeah, I
maybe do we
can.
want to stop recording since that was like the overview, and then we can chat
Sure.
more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk some logistics. Anything else we should talk about before I stop the recording?
We're good.
Nope.